In today's masterclass, we are going to see what are the 4 different styles in which we attach ourselves to any relationship from the time that we are born, right? And along the way, we are also going to see, how these attachment styles are reinforced by the caregiving styles from our environment, mostly parenting styles. Incidentally, there are also 4 of them. Since we are looking at attachment styles, which are the bedrock of relationships, we will look at the neuroscience of relationships in between, so that if as adult, we feel that some of our relationships can be more functional than they actually are, we will now have a choice of working, whether we want to work with the neuroscience and our biology part, or whether we want to work with our behavior, or both. So let's start to figure out how is it that we can question the attachment styles that we now have in different kind of relationships. I begin with Swami Vivekananda's quote, because I believe in the philosophy that it's perennial. Like Patriji always keeps saying that we have to look at great masters for inspiration. I start with his quote. He says, each soul is potentially divine. The goal is to manifest this divinity by controlling nature, external and internal. Do this either by work or worship or psychic control, philosophy, by one or more, or all of this, and be free. So today's workshop is going to deal with the first part of this quote, right? How do we manifest the divinity, the higher self, the inner part of our being with the external? How do we bring this focus and make sense of it both internally and externally? The reason why we need to focus on making sense both internally and fuse it with the external environment, it's because our inner self is at times confused. It's confused with the false information about our self-worth, because when people give us compliments, we tend to believe them. If they criticize us, we tend to believe that also. So what is true? Are the compliments true? Are the criticisms true? Where is our anchor? So the way that we began this workshop with Swami Vivekananda's quote is that perhaps we need to investigate this a little more. Where is the anchor for our inner self? Where is the anchor? And do we need to share that with the external environment, even when it is not working for us? So yes, we are now slowly setting the stage for the deep exploration within. Because in the process of growing up, we have all been wounded, dear friends, right? We have experienced pain from different behaviors and inputs from our surroundings. It could be our parents who have hurt us, siblings, peers, authority figures, even strangers who have unknowingly caused us pain. And this pain is stored in the cells of our bodies in form of memories and habits, right? And this is a pain, interestingly, that no one outside of ourself understands. It's locked inside in the form of sorrow. So that's one aspect of ourselves. And we have to remember how we started the session today, that there is this divine aspect within us. And we have this capability of parenting our inner self, our inner child, whenever we are ready for it. So we have options. Because when we get attached to this pain, wounded self-image is created by people who do not know that they too have this divine self. From our environment, who are these people who cause us pain? Our dear ones, our loved ones, people whom we know, right? And if they are not in touch with their higher self, they have the power to hurt us when our resources are low. But as adults, can we examine and understand how to deal with this even better so that we are joyful, happy, and more functional? Healing is possible. If there's one thing that we all need to take away from this workshop today, is the belief and the faith that healing is possible of anything at any point of time, right? The moment we learn to integrate our inner experiences, inner child experiences with our higher self experiences, we have a choice. So yes, I know that we tend to use a lot of this term inner child very openly. So I'd like to explain, because I'm seeing a lot of people who might have joined for the first time. What do I mean by the term inner child, right? So inner child is anybody's individual's childlike aspect. It includes what we have learned as a child, right? It's an expression not only of your uh, childish self, but the lived experiences so far, right? So it can also be the source of inner strength, because early experiences play a very strong part, as along the way we will see how early experiences play a very strong part in our development as a child. So whenever I use the experience inner child, don't get confused. It's our childlike aspect. We know that, right? Whenever we get in touch with our feelings, we know exactly how to behave, let go of ourselves. But we have those three parts within ourselves. We have a childish part, which lets goes and experiences feelings. We have this parent part, which takes responsibility, has to take control. And then we have this adult part, where we can integrate different aspects of ourselves, weigh consequences, and then behave from there, right? So now that we have understood a little bit about how things go on inside of us, let's see how do we make connection with the world outside of us, because both internal and external influences our behavior, right? So we are human beings. We work through connections. And how do we establish these connections? Because through our social habits, we are social beings, right? We need to be with others. We need to form relationships. But these relationships have an um, underlying space which has to be understood a little in depth, because the way we as children, we need to form relationship for more reasons than just survival. We need comfort, and more about that will come later, because there's enough and more research work that has been done to explain how human child is the most helpless of all the in the whole animal kingdom, and we need the most support to be fully functional. And it is really long. It's a human beings who need anything between 10 to 14 years to become a fully functional, independent individual, even though the brain um, keeps growing at till 25. So I keep joking all the time, this 18-year-old as an adult is really a myth. I think people used to die at 40, so they had to begin faster, and they started at 18. But we know there is enough and more proof of neuroscience to say that brain capacity increases and it keeps growing till 25 years of age, right? So let's start with delving deep into what is it that we are going to talk about more today. Human beings need to form attachment. This is our innate basic need. If we ever look at Maslow's pyramid of needs, you will find that the basic human need is not only for survival, but it's also attachment. We need to have meaning. We need to feel secure. So it is a deep and enduring bond between two people, where one seeks and feels comfort in presence of another person. So in children, yes, it is with the caregiver. You grow a little more, it'll be with your friends. Grow a little more, it'll be with your partners, right? So it explains, this attachment theory, it explains how parent-child relationship emerges and influences all the subsequent development in a human life, right? So interestingly, so I will, it's an interesting information to have, that attachments are more likely to form with those who respond accurately with the child signals. It's not the person with whom they spend most time with. So it is, you can see the example right away, right? Even though there is, we have helpers to take care of children, it is to the mother that the child is more attached, even though the mother is working and she may be away for, for some time or most of the time during the day. But when they are back, the child will go back to the mother. It's not just because there is an physical contact. The child doesn't know it was born of that, but it's because who is the person who responds most accurately to its needs. So there are two psychologists, Schoffer and Emerson. They call this sensitive responsiveness. So herein lies the fact that when you grow up and then there are adults or friends or family or your partners who are sensitive to your needs, you will see that your attachment to that person is different from your biological parents or your family people. Note that, please. So early on, here's the secret that our style of attachment affects everything. So something that we are exposed to at a time when we have the least resources as a child, it goes on to affecting everything from our partner selection to how well our relationship progress, and also, interestingly, how it ends. It's getting interesting. So from here on, I might encourage you to take some personal notes if you like, because when you look at your own attachment styles, you may want to reinforce something that works for you in your meditation and mindfulness time. So how did this start? How did we start with this attachment system? So right. So it was made as a system automatically by the nature because we needed protection from the danger that we were exposed to when we were still living outside, in the jungles and surviving what was available by the nature, right? So it was protection from the danger was needed by a stronger and wiser figure who had already survived for longer than us, right? So it was essential for the survival of infants to attach themselves to people who would provide them that protection that was needed then. So yes, fast forward, environment has changed in the past 12,000 years from the time that human beings actually discovered farming. But human brain, it hasn't changed at all, right? So this behavioral tendencies, which increase the chances of our surviving to the reproductive age, because that's the only two agenda that nature has: survival and then reproduction, right? These are the two agendas that the nature has with us. So we needed to have a certain base, a certain behavioral tendency had to be installed and genetically coded to ensure our survival to the reproductive age. So attachment ensures sufficient care and motivates the vulnerable individuals to seek close and physical, emotional proximity with the caregivers, especially when they are distressed, right? So now herein we understand a little bit about the amount of work that has already been done by different psychologists and theorists. And one of them who stands apart is John Bowlby, right? He was a British psychoanalyst who attempted to understand why does the child get so intensely distressed? What is this distress that an infant experiences when they are separated from their parents, right? So he observed that infants, they would go into extraordinary lengths, crying, clinking, frantically searching, trying to make eye contact to prevent separation from the people that whom they thought that they are safe with, and they miss that proximity, that connection when they are not there. So yes, even though it is very apparent in children, interestingly enough, research has also been done that these motives, they affect how people think and behave in close relationship, even in adults, right? So these are adaptive patterns. These are adaptive behaviors, which a child learns. They are adaptive responses when the child is separated from a caregiving figure. because human infants, like I mentioned before, are the most helpless of the entire mammalian infant range. They cannot feed themselves, they cannot protect themselves, they are dependent upon the older and the wiser adults around us. So if they are not attached and they don't figure out how to survive and get that their needs met, it is difficult for them to live. So it is an evolutionary necessity. We are now understanding that our attachment styles, they began in childhood because it was an evolutionary necessity. First, we had to survive and live, right? But even though those circumstances has changed, the way our brain works hasn't changed. We still work on the same system. More about that will be later. But uh, this is made to promote the attachment style is designed to promote survival. It is for maintaining proximity with your caregivers, right? When you're vulnerable, when you're children, when you're infants, when we could not protect ourselves. So this is the way, this is the response, adaptive response that we grew within ourselves so that we would survive. So there's a psychological standpoint behind it also. Why? Why did we need to be protected? Because proximity, being close to a person who has more experiences, who can offer us protection, it reduces fear and anxiety and all related form of distress, right? So if we are not spending our energy getting distressed, being angry, being scared, we have energy left to do other things in life, to explore, to grow, to do whatever it is that we want to do. So interestingly, this attachment system, which is both, we will get into the patterns later, but it is secure and insecure. It is turned off when individuals experience, protection. When there is sufficient reduction in fear, anxiety, or distress, attachment system need not work. You feel safe. So there's no need to cling to anything. But when sufficient security is not achieved, the system remains partially or fully activated. So here is a good point. We can stop and have a look at ourselves. What is it? What happens within us when we don't feel safe? I'm going to go ahead and introduce you to the 4 attachment styles. But this is the point that I want you to remember when you're going through the attachment, when we are looking through the attachment styles, is what is the style that works for you when you don't feel safe? Because then one of those attachment styles are working, right? So we'll have 2 things to take away. One, when we feel safe, how is it that we feel about others? Significant others basically mean people who are giving us support, who are our caregivers, whom we give significance in our life. What do we feel about them? And the second thing, when we are feeling secure, what is the model of the self of our own selves that we feel? So 2 things, what we feel about others when we are safe, what we feel about ourselves when we are safe. Vice versa, what we feel about others when we don't feel safe, we feel threatened. And what does it mean for us? What does it mean for us when we are children? And what does it mean for us today when we are adults? Both. Because in the end, this workshop is about self-awareness and self-growth. Do we have a choice to look at our attachment styles and see how we can tweak it? Because we will have a choice whether we want to work with our biology or we want to work with our behavior or both. So the mental working model actually guides us into behaving. If we feel something, then what is it that I can count upon? If I'm upset, can I ask someone to support me? If I need help, can I seek it? If I'm joyful, can I share it? So if then models begins as a part, as an offspring of our attachment styles. So once developed, this attachment style and models, they will also guide us into how we relate to our close partners and the interpersonal world around us, especially in threatening situations. But working models can change over a period of time the moment you can bring consciousness and awareness or experiences and events that contradict. And we as individuals, we always have the power to reclaim that personal space if it's not working for us. So try not to confuse attachment with love. As I'm getting into attachment, different patterns. This is not just love, right? It is more about fear, dependency, survival, and about how we feel rather than how the other person is making us feel. So please get ready. We are getting into the details of how attachment pattern is established in early childhood and continues to function as a working model. So I have the name of psychologists who have done enough work on it, Snyder, Gurman, and Coates. They say that this kind of relationship that they have is a blueprint for the later in life. So no one can really underestimate the importance of parents and our caregivers on a child's development and how it can actually affect their future's development. You know, there is enough proof, since we live in a place where we need facts and we need research and we need people to explain to us why something is like the way it is. So the primary caregiver's behavior and interaction towards a child, it affects and shapes their expectations and interactions with everyone else they meet in their lives. So a lot of work has been done also where it has been shown that how at different stages of your growth, a child has different needs. And if that need is met, how they learn to resolve conflict of that particular stage and go ahead and thrive. And if it's not met, the child is not going to stop growing, right? You're going to go ahead and go to the next stage and the next stage. But it's like uh, carrying a backpack and having a rock in there, right? So if your need is not met, okay, so now you have something that is unresolved and you haven't really learned about it. And you go on to the next stage. And next stage, if your need is met and you're more functional, fine. But that rock stays. That rock stays in your backpack. And you go on to the next. So different stages have different needs. I'm not going to get in, that's a whole subject in itself. But our attachment styles are very important because they develop at a time where we have the least resources. And if we don't look at it when we have more, it stops us from being fully functional. So here are the 4 attachment styles that we are going to now understand one by one. What are those 4? First is a secure style, where a person is confident, self-possessed, is able to easily interact with others, meeting both their needs, the other person's needs. They're fine. They know how to negotiate and work in this jungle of relationships. Next is anxious or ambivalent. There are many names, don't get confused. Anxious is fine. When there is an anxious or an avoidant attachment pattern, which is the next one, we will unconsciously, we might go ahead and pick partners that fits this particular maladaptive pattern within us. So if we are not secure, we also seek people who are not secure. If we are anxious, it's possible for us to look for people who are also anxious or who are absolutely very differently attached with themselves. And we keep working, we're trying to work out that relationship, right? And if we are disorganized, that's it. We are most likely to be choosing someone who is not the ideal choice for our self-growth and for someone who would make us happy. So 1 secure style, 3 insecure styles. We will see where we lie in this continuum from secure to disorganized. We have all been there. With some people, sometimes we are secure. With others, we are anxious. With some, we are avoidant, and I hope we are never disorganized, basically. That's my hope for all of us. What does secure attachment mean? Research shows anything between 60 to 65% of us have this attachment. This means we are autonomous, we are happy to explore, we feel secure enough to go out from the secure base that our caregivers and life provides us, and we are basically happy people, right? So a child with secure attachment with parents would be able to have lasting relationships as adults with others. They see their parents as a secure base. They see their parents as a secure base from which they can venture out and independently explore the world. So that means the parents, they have been really responsive with this child. They have been quick, they have been sensitive, and most importantly, consistent. So that all the fulfillment of a child's need has happened. The child believes and trusts that all his needs are going to be met. So how do they behave? How was the research done? Is that they have studied children, a lot number of children over a wide period of time, and they see that who are these children when they are separated from parents? How do they behave? So there was Bowlby who did this work, and there's also Ainsworth, Mary Ainsworth, who has done this work, and she calls it strange situation. If you guys are curious, you can look it up. You can Google it as well. That enough research has been to see that, how do the secure people behave when they are separated from their caregivers? So they're obviously distressed when the parent leaves, but they're very happy to have them back. So they seek comfort from, from their parents or caregivers when they're sad or they're scared. They they feel free to show their secure attachment style, and because they trust their caregivers, they do not worry about being abandoned, and they view themselves as worthy and well liked. This is the point. So a sense of worthiness, self-worth comes pretty quickly in life from our environment. So this is the first and the best way of attaching. So we check, are we there? Next, if you look at anxious attachments, right? Obviously, our state of being is anxious, insecure, probably angry. So about less than 20%, 10 to 15% of people are known to have anxious attachments, right? So why? In their case, their caregiver's responsiveness has been inconsistent. Sometimes sensitive, sometimes neglectful, sometimes intrusive, in the sense that they would come in and they say, hey, I'm available for you all the time, here I am. But at other times, they're just not available. So the child, they cannot rely on their needs to be met when they need it. So yes, they are, these kind of children would be very, very distressed when the caregiver leaves. But somehow when the person comes back, they are not really very comforted, right? So they're ill at ease initially, upon separation, and they become extremely distressed when they are separated. But even when the parent returns, they're ill at ease. They're having difficult time being soothed, being calm, and they have conflicting behaviors in which, they want to be, a person may think that, oh, they want to be comforted, they're crying, they're upset, but it also looks as if they want to punish their parents for leaving. We have to understand that when we are child and when we are infants, we do not have words, right? We do not have words for everything that we are doing. So our behavior, we act it out. We don't have vocabulary to speak. Sometimes we also don't have the power to speak. So we act it out in different ways. Avoidant, again, about less than 20%, 10 to 15%. People who have avoidant, they don't appear to be, these are the children who don't appear to be very distressed when they are separated. And when they, when they are reunited with their parents, they also don't seek active contact with their parents. So they have started being avoidant very, very early in life. Why? Because parents have been distant, unavailable, unresponsive, dismissive, not caring. So these are the children's, the research shows that these are if a child has an avoidant pattern of attachment, they're not very distressed when parents leave. They're not really very bothered when they come back. I mean, like, they know that their needs are not really going to be met, right? So there's not much of response when the caregiver returns. They don't make contact, or they don't seek that contact with their caregiver. So this avoidance style, it demonstrates suppressive feelings towards the caregiver, right? And they are discouraged from having intimate relationships because uh, they have been exposed to some behavior from their parents which is not consistent. So the child doesn't know how to make sense of that. So yes, the child does want to make connection, but it is not able to. How do we know that? How those psychologists are able to come out and have this theory is that, the brain patterns can be actually measured on EEG. We have machinery for that now, and it shows that the neurons, the circuitry in the child's brain that is being fired is that they want the connection. They feel insecure inside, but because their security hasn't been met consistently over a period of time, the coping style has become avoidant. It's not that they don't need it. They have developed a style of coping by not showing it outward. And of course, the last one, we have the state of being unresolved. We don't know how to behave because people around us are so behave so erratically. So we do not know how to behave, because sometimes we are responsive, sometimes we are passive, sometimes we are angry. And this is in extreme cases where parenting or the childhood has been abused, and neglected, and it has been frightening for the child in some ways, right? So this is a place where the child is severely confused with no strategy of their own need being met. So it is definitely not secure, right? So they don't know how to be anxious about it or avoidant. They are basically confused, dazed, and they're apprehensive in the presence of the caregiver. So what it means for us is that if we are insecure, if we are attached insecurely to people, what are we going to show ourselves? How are we going to show up? We have low self-esteem, we are needy, we are clingy, and yes, we use the technical term as pseudo-independent. We show we don't need people, but we actually do inside. We lack self-control, we are unable to develop and maintain friendships. It is very difficult, for us to genuinely trust and have intimate and affectionate relationship with people, right? So attachment behavior is patterned in both safe and frightening contexts, right? When we are faced with stress and adversity, both our biology and our behavior gets dysregulated. So what is the fallback? Where do we fall back? Where do we draw our coping styles from, right? So if we have secure style, we will ask, we will reach out, we'll figure out how to help ourselves and the people around us. And if we are insecure, we are alienated from people and parents who have oppositional behaviors and other authority figures. So it can, in extreme cases, descend into antisocial attitudes, behavior, aggression, violence. So I'm going to spare ourselves the research on that today, but I'm sure you're getting the point what I'm trying to make. The connection here is that as people are exposed to different attachment styles from very young ages, they're also exposed, these are reinforced by the caregiving, by the different parenting styles that the child has been exposed to. So there's a close relationship between parenting style that reinforces child's attachment style, or it doesn't. right? So so we have to get into this a little bit. I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but I have to get into it so that you make the connection. How it is not only just you or we as children who have developed this coping mechanism, because it has also been encouraged by our environment. So by the environment, I not only mean parents. For understanding, we say parenting style, but it's a caregiving style. From people at home, from our neighbors, from our teachers, from the environment at large. How has it been? So there was this psychologist, Diana Baumrind, who has done enough and more research on two dimensions. First is responsiveness, and the second is demandingness. And based on that, uh, the caregiving style, parenting style, we have four of them, right? So what is responsiveness? It is the degree to which parents are accepting and sensitive to their child's emotional and development needs. As opposed to demandingness, it's the extent to which the parents demand their child's behavior and their maturity from them. So yes, there's always a exchange. When something is given, something is also demanded of us, right? So based on the responsiveness of the parent and the demandingness of the parent, uh, we have four different styles. And this style is greatly influences not only childhood behavior, but adolescent development, and probably it affects the relationships with others in a very similar fashion, where attachment style is reinforced by the parenting style. So here are the four parenting style, and I have tried to simplify it so that we understand it very clearly. So if the parents have been very demanding, but they haven't been responsive, you fall in the first one, authoritarian, my way or the highway, right? But if they have been, responsive, very responsive, and they've also been demanding, hey, you have what it takes, but come on, live up to your true potential. That's the best place, authoritative. But if they have been responsive, but they haven't demanded anything, huh? You can do what you want, but here, you want this, you have this, you want this, you have that. So that's very permissive. And if they have neither given attention and nor they have demanded anything, it is neglectful. Clear? I'm going to have this icon in the next 4 slides as well, so that you can make your connection. So if our parenting has been authoritarian, or our parents have been disciplinarians, they have been very high at demandingness and very low in responsiveness, right? So what is the outcome? So the rules have been strict, the expectations have been high, with no explanations. You have to do this, that's it. They expect blind obedience. And what is the outcome? I'm more interested in the outcome part, right? Outcome is that children are anxious. They're less independent because they haven't been allowed self-expression, low self-esteem, poor social skills, sometimes low academic performance, mental illness, drug abuse, delinquency. It's a sliding scale. We go there. So these parents use very stern discipline and often employ very harsh punishments, such as beating them up, or not talking to a person for months. I have a lot of parents coming back and saying that they do not, they just stop talking to their children. So it's not understanding that the child needs connection to thrive, to grow, to make sense, right? So their disciplinary methods are arbitrary, dominating, and it's a status distinction. I'm the one in charge, so you better follow me, that kind. So it's like they're not really responsive to the child's needs and what they want, not very nurturing. And they use what is called probably tough love, right? Next, end of the other structure, authoritarian. Now we come to something where they're not very, demanding, right? Non-demanding, but they give the child everything that they want. So very few rules. And so what is the outcome? What happens to the child? The child becomes impulsive, because they have inadequate emotional regulation now. They cannot follow rules, they have poor self-control, they become egocentric. That's it. The moment I need, you have to give it back to me. Very poor social skills, problematic relationships later in life. So this is like indulgent parenting, right? They are warm, but they do not like to say no because they think they might disappoint their children. What if their children breaks when they say no to them? So they feel like, as if it feels like they want to be more friends, not knowing that they need parents. Children will make friends. They need to make friends with their age people. If you are parent, you are parent for a reason, right? So, but children growing up in permissive family will be uh, you know, they might have good self-esteem because they have been given everything, but they will have very poor emotional regulation. They're probably immature and irresponsible. Third style, neglectful. No rules, right? Low on demandingness, low on responsiveness. Parents are not available, no firm boundaries, or high standards to live up to. So what is the outcome? Outcome is impulsive. You cannot self-regulate emotions. There is delinquency in the later style. They do not know, because this is the place. If this is at the bedrock of disorganized style of attachment, children will start thinking about self-harm, substance abuse, because they feel that nobody really cares about them, right? So children growing up with this parenting styles are exposed to indifferent environment without any guidance or support, and they're most likely to be um, depressed, impulsive, and have very poor social skills. Coming to authoritative, high demanding and high responsive. Clear rules and boundaries, open discussions, guidance, reasoning, lots of conversations, and with enough space, high expectations of maturity and achievement. If you don't believe in your child, that the child also doesn't believe in itself, in herself, itself, not itself. But this is the outcome of when parents are both responsive and demanding, is that children grow up with more self-esteem, better social skills. They communicate better, they have more friends, they don't goof off that much, their academic performance are better, their mental health is overall in a much better space because they never feel depressed. They have enough resources to um, trust themselves, and they trust the system around it. They know if they need help, there are parents. So these are the people, parent, who spend time to share value system with their children, morals, goals. Children feel cherished, they feel securely attached, right? The discipline, of course, there's discipline, but it is confrontative, right? That it is, you will mention this is not allowed, there's negotiation, and you see the improvement over a period of time. There is a behavior regulation. It is not that everything is allowed, right? These are the parents who are willing to listen and guide the children when the question arises. And then these are the parents who are secure enough to let their children make their share of mistakes and then come back if they need support, because children are going to learn. It's about children learning, whether they learn from parents, whether they learn from their own mistakes. It's okay. So authoritative parents would always maintain the power to say no, but they would also want their children to be assertive, socially responsible, cooperative, and self-regulated. Attachment style is getting transmitted intergenerationally, because it is reinforced by parenting or caregiving style. So children who lack secure attachment with caregivers, they will grow up to be parents who are incapable of establishing this crucial connection with their own children. So I have a little bit of figures for anybody who's interested, that um, you know how it is that some of the parents, some amongst us whom we may have known of, or we have heard of, or seen on TV news anywhere, how are the parents that they fail to protect, nurture, and love their children, but they instead, they abuse, neglect, and abandon. It's probably of their own insecure attachment style. eventually, because I have some figures from, but then all these kind of research are done in the Western world, where 81% of child victims, they were actually maltreated by a parent who are acting alone or with someone else. They don't have the empathy or the wherewithal to support the child when it needs the support. So about 50 to 80% of all child abuse cases, they involve parents who have themselves been involved with some kind of abuse, either drug or alcohol, or exposed to certain kind of situations. But it has also happened that, when there has been great natural calamities, then also it happens when things are out of your hand, and nobody is responsible, like like a flood or an earthquake, or you have to migrate from a country to another because it's not politically safe. So parenting is dependent on the external circumstances like that as well. So since our attachment style is the bedrock of our relationship, we now quickly get into the neuroscience of relationships. And we will see how much we can do today before we understand how it affects our adult patterns of behavior. So what does it mean, neuroscience of relationship? Why do we need to do it? Because we need to understand how the biology works. We are psycho, and social beings, right? So neuroscience of relationships is, it's very easy to understand, but we have to do this. Our brain follows a reward-based learning system. And this hasn't changed from the time that we were sea slugs having only 20,000 odd neurons, and to the complex human beings that we now have. The latest I see is the number 86 billion neurons in our human brain. From 20,000 to 86 billion neurons today, we possess that. Right? So, but we learn the same way. Nothing much has changed. We see berries, trigger, we eat them, behavior, and we feel, oh wow, it's sweet, it's nice, like it's a reward. So every time we have a reward for any point of a behavior, we lay down a memory, a neural pathway to come back for more. Right? So our brain has still the same behavior system, right? So, and it has a lot of names, and there's so much work has been done. So under the name of operant conditioning, associative learning, positive, negative reinforcement, let's not get into it. There's a lot of, the good news is that we know how human brain works in concise. What's not such a good news? If we know how it works, we also know how to hijack the system, right? So we have stumbled upon substances and behaviors that simply hijack the system. So our attachment style in our different relationships unknowingly can hijack our system so that we are not really able to use all the resources that we have internally. Our brain has roughly three systems: reptilian, limbic, and the neocortex, the prefrontal lobes. So specific brain regions are wired to be alert for potential threat and dangers, which is our reptilian brain at the base of the neck. It's also called amygdala. Not important, but understand that to the reptilian primitive brain, a threat can be both physical, emotional, or mental. Brain cannot see, it's a muscle. It takes its input from the environment. So if we sense threat, it has developed a system over billions of years to protect ourselves. So the moment our reptilian brain senses threat, its job is to shut down the part that makes decisions. It conserves energies, and it functions in a totally different way. So can it make out whether the threat is real or imagined? No. Through our attachment patterns in different relationships, if we imagine that we don't have resources, we have low self-worth, we have difficulties, we imagine a problem, our brain senses it as a threat. And what does it do? If it senses it as a threat, what does it do? Right? So the fear, flight, and fight, flight, or freeze part of that working system is now engaged. And executive system, the thinking part, is disengaged, right? Because what is the job? We had the survival was our biggest natural instinct. So if we have to survive, we have to cut off thinking, digestion, all those immunity. We don't need to work on that. We need to work on our fight, flight, and survival. So brain will secrete the right amount of hormones so that blood is pumped to our limbs and we are ready. So here we have to remember the two forms of attachment, insecure attachment, anxiety, or avoidance, are associated with the unique patterns of emotional regulation, and the way our brains work when we feel threatened or distressed. That is the style that works. So some brains, what we understand now is that some brain regions are wired for establishing loving connections and mutual benefit. Some are driven by different needs, pleasure, lust, desire, and we can learn how to soothe any overwhelming feeling and return to harmony. We have the mechanics. If we don't feel threatened, our attachment style can disengage itself and we can have more resources available to us. So during evolutionary history, protection from an elder, wiser, stronger figure was essential. But we still, as adults in the present modern world, that is the system that we are carrying. That is the system that we have inherited, right? So to ensure sufficient care, protection, the selection procedures have made this attachment system, right? So that when we feel vulnerable, we can seek close physical and emotional proximity to people who can make us feel safe, right? So, but is the distress real or imagined? Are we really threatened anymore or not? That is where the choice lies, whether we can be more functional or not, right? So when are the times? So there's this an acronym HALT, which these are the times when we feel and we fall back on very poor coping mechanisms. First, when we are hungry, we are angry, when we are lonely, or when we are tired, right? So these are the times that we fall back on really our attachment styles, our relationships, our mechanisms that work on an automatic pilot, right? So the reason why we stop thinking at this point of time is because the part that has all conflict resolution skills and analytical skills, the prefrontal cortex, PFC is prefrontal cortex, that is the last part that the brain has developed. It has developed the reptilian brain, then it has formed the limbic brain, and then it has formed the neocortex, PFC. It is the youngest part of the brain. So that's the first to shut down. The moment you feel threatened, that's the first part that shuts down. Right? So that's the part which goes offline. So if we cannot rely on our own prefrontal reasoning part, are there any other ways in which we can manage our behaviors? Since you have come to Pyramid Valley, there is mindfulness and meditation to our rescue. Right? Paying attention to something helps us clearly see what we are getting from that particular behavior at that particular moment. So if we can pay careful attention to the threats or cravings or attachments that we are perceiving, we can deactivate our attachment system. Interestingly, as we learn to be aware and notice how these cravings or attachments or behavior or distress arise, and just watch them, just be a witness, we will see that they are simply made of thoughts and body sensations, right? We can also see how they change. If we watch them, we will see that it is changing, because something that comes, it also goes. Whether that threat was real or whether it was imagined, we can see very, very clearly. And then we can learn to stay with anything that causes us distress or discomfort, and ride out that threat instead of acting on it and falling back to insecure style of behavior, right? So yes, I have a quick research note. Lots of work has been done. According to Hazen and Shaver, emotional bond that develops between adult romantic partners. We are in adulthood, and how does it matter to us? Yes, attachment style we have developed in childhood. But how does it matter now? It matters because adult romantic partner, whatever the attachment style you have, is partly a function of the same motivational system, attachment system, right? That gives rise between infants and their caregivers. So, what are the features which are common between child and caregivers when they are young and romantic partners as they grow up, right? So here are some of them. I'm going to share them with you between what Hazen and Shaver's research shows, that both feel safe when the other person is near and responsive. They engage in close, intimate bodily contact. We know that, right? Hugging for 30 seconds releases so much endorphins in our system. They both feel insecure when the other person is inaccessible. They share discoveries with one another. They play with each other. There is a lot of baby talk. How baby talks, and we know that, right? We also baby talk in relationships. So adult and romantic relationships are attachment. And romantic love is also a part of this attachment behavioral system, right? That gives rise to caregiving as well as our sexual behaviors later on in life. So this, our adult romantic attachment behavior relationships, are blueprints of how we have been wired, right? How hard will we fight or give up? All the relationships that we have formed early in life is going to be reflected in our behavior if there hasn't been a conscious stock taking of those behavior as adults. So what are the differences between the four styles? We have done that, right? What are the differences between secure, avoidant, anxious, and disorganized styles? Is how someone perceives and deals with closeness and emotional intimacy. Are you secure or are you not? Your ability to communicate your emotional and personal needs, and also understand the other person's need based on your type. If you're avoidant, you only want to take care of yourself. You're not bothered about others. If you're anxious, you don't know. So you'll probably do more. If you're disorganized, you just have no clue. You somehow manage and rumble through life. And if you're secure, ways of responding to conflict, and also expectations about what is it that you want from your partners, and what do you want from this particular relationship. Is it meeting your need? Are you able to communicate clearly, right? So we have formed a working model in our in early in life, and it has been reinforced by the parenting style. And if we don't look at it, if we don't take a stop, we understand whether it's working for us in adulthood, that's the style that we are going to fall back on, right? So the three dimensions which are important, where we need to understand that as we go into our next phase, right? The first thing is that the attachment pattern characterizes is closeness. How close are we comfortable in feeling when we want to be emotionally intimate with others people? What is going to be that depth, right? Highly avoidant people will have very negative view of their romantic partners. God knows whether they'll do my work or not. Let's just get our needs met and leave. We know that, right? It happens. We have seen it. Dependence and avoidance, the extent to which people feel comfortable on depending on others and having our partners also dependent on us. How comfortable do we feel that? So avoidant people, They will maintain their independence, control, autonomy, and they don't want relationships because, for them, the proximity to romantic partners is probably not possible or desirable. So it depends on, what is it that is happening inside of you. So now we come, and of course, there's anxiety. So how much are we going to worry about whether our partners are going to be to abandon or reject us, right? So our attachment styles are working in these three dimensions all the time, right? So if we want to see how things are working out, we can just look at our own attachment style and believe that what are our beliefs? What are our beliefs at the moment about ourselves? Are we distancing the moment we feel threat? Do we feel discomfort if someone disagrees with us, right? What are we, what coping styles and strategies are we employing, right? Are we able to suppress and deal with our negative thoughts and emotions, which may be imagined because they are definitely not real? Or are we independent and autonomous? If we are highly anxious, then we are heavily invested in their relationships, too heavily. If we feel our meaning, our existence comes from that relationship. If we are avoidant, we don't want to deal with it. So long as our needs are being met, forget it. I don't want to deal with it, right? Or are we functional? We want to be there for people when they need us, and people are there when we ask for support, right? So let's look at what does secure attachment look in adulthood. What does it mean? If we are secure attached, what does it mean? Where are we? Right? This is based on positive self-image, low dependency, and low avoidance. What does that mean? Right? What does it mean? Low dependency. By low dependency means that, we have a positive image of others. So we don't need to avoid others, and we don't need to depend upon them. We don't need to avoid them. We have a good image of ourselves. We have a good image of others. So we don't need to, we are in a comfortable place. We are very low on anxiety. We are comfortable with intimacy. We are not worried about rejection or preoccupied with the relationship, whether it is going to work, whether it's not going to work. So, it's we can have this feeling of, the mental talk that is going on is that it is easy for me to get close to others. I'm comfortable depending on them. And they can also ask me. I don't worry about, whether somebody is going to abandon me or not. If they have problems, they are probably going to talk to me whenever they are ready, right? So we are able to create meaningful relationships and set appropriate boundaries. Our attachment styles, our behavior, our functionality, and our positive self-image, self-worth. So we are not only independent, we are interdependent. We realize that we can work well as individuals, but we work even better when we can depend on someone and have them depend on us. This is how successful partnerships are formed and teams are formed through secure attachment. So in partnership, I wanted to deal with it. What does it look like in partnership, right? Well, a partnership is a comfortable, warm, loving space on close relationship. You can depend on your partner, you can allow your partner to depend on you, you're available to them in their times of need, you accept the partner's needs for separation. I have this lovely quote of Khalil Gibran that I quote whenever I get a chance, actually, honestly, is that there should be spaces and togetherness. Pillars of a temple stand apart. So when you're building something beautiful, there has to be space. Otherwise, the engineering fails, right? The pillars stand apart. So we are able to, if we are securely attached, we are able to accept the partner's need for separateness without feeling rejected or threatened. So we can be close and we can be independent and we can be tolerant and forgiving of our differences, right? So we are able to communicate emotions and needs honestly and openly. We are attuned to the partner's needs. If they need space, we leave them alone. Otherwise, we come back and re-engage with them and be there for them. We don't avoid conflict. We are there. Whenever they are ready to solve the conflict, we are there. We hold space. So we learn to manage emotions very well, not really very upset about relationship issues because we are secure. We know that relationship is not at stake. We may disagree about something, but our relationship is not threatened with that. So we are easy to resolve conflicts. We forgive people easily, and our past doesn't hurt us so much anymore because we have gone on to becoming sensitive, warm, and caring. Not only parents, but individuals. We are cued in. We are attached to our children like that, and we have taken care of inner child so that we are now securely attached to our adult self as well. So secure attachment is actually a real connection. They don't in this if you have a secure attachment with your partner, there is no fantasy bond where you imagine a false sense of security. Your security is real. It is there for you. If it is anxious, ambivalent, what does it look like, right? So you you know you would avoid the pain and discomfort by focusing externally. You will one becomes preoccupied with whether, when, how much you're cared for. If you do this, then I feel cared for. So example, you really dress up well for your partner, and then your partner is preoccupied with something. They're waiting to drive you and go with you to some place, but they forget to praise you. That's it. Your evening is over because they did not care for you in the manner that you wanted to be cared for. So you're preoccupied all the time by focusing externally. You do not check whether you're looking nice, whether you're feeling okay. Someone appreciates, great. Someone doesn't, carry on. We are fine. We watch behavior of others when we are anxious and reach out for connection all the time. And we escalate it at the drop of a hat. So we are low on avoidance because all the time we are seeking. We are high on dependence. We are high on anxiety. So we are craving closeness, and because we are craving intimacy, because not because of fullness, but we are insecure about the relationship. So what's the mental chatter that is going on? I want to be very close. I want to merge with others, but somehow the other person is reluctant, to get this close. So I often worry. I mean, you'll often worry whether the other person really loves you or not, or whether they'll abandon you or not, because the need that you have for closeness is inordinate, and it really scares people away, right? So we can be charming because we know how to have our needs met. But basically, we look at others for support. So what does a partnership look like? You're constantly worried, and you hyperactivate the attachment system needs. You're worried. You need to check again and again. Oh, the person is there or not. Oh, they are doing the right thing or not. You're preoccupied. You're needy. You need reassurance all the time. You will think all and worried about all the past issues that intrude, or they may be forming a part of the attachment system in this particular present relationship. This is where attachment style comes in. If you're anxious, this is what it looks like even in adulthood. You're overly sensitive to the partner's action or moods. If they have said something and they don't mean it, you're not able to separate that. Oh, this is about them. Forget it. This is not about me, right? And you take it too personally. Overly sensitive to partners and actions, moods, and you can be argumentative, combative, angry, controlling, very poor personal boundaries. More about that tomorrow, but it's highly emotional state, and anxiety is a highly emotional state. So you're most likely to pick a partner who probably fits in with this maladaptive, if you have a choice of partners, that is, because in Asian marriages, a lot of time things are decided for us already, right? But going forward in different relationships that we will probably be picking partners who are also maladaptive by choosing someone who's not the ideal person to make us happy, because we have this working model of being anxious and preoccupied and needing too much support all the time, right? So communication feels like it's not collaborative. We are unaware of our responsibility in the relationship issues. We always blame others. Focus is on the others. It comes from outside, not inside. So we are unpredictable, we are moody. And all the time, there is conflict around us. There's someone who stirs our pot, something or the other which stirs our pot, so to speak. It's still idiom. So if we are like that, we will also have inconsistent attunement with our children who are likely to be anxiously attached. So why? Because communication is so much nonverbal. That's the thing that they will learn from us. So is it possible for us, I'm going to remind you again and again that the reason why we are getting into so much details is for us to know that the power actually lies within us. At any point of time, if we want to relook at things which are not functional for us anymore, we can. So if we are anxious, we look for a fantasy world. Instead of feeling real love, real connection, we have this emotional hunger. We are looking at someone else to complete us. We imagine that we are two separate parts of a puzzle and somehow something will get together and then we will become a whole. And if that is not happening, our life doesn't have a meaning, right? So even though we are seeking a sense of safety and security, by clinging, we pushed our partners away. And especially if they have different style of attachment. What if they are secure and we are not? They are fine and they are wondering why? Why do I where's the person's boundary? Why aren't they doing? Why is this relationship at stake? Every time I'm doing my own thing. So if we feel unsure of our partner's feelings, unsafe in the relationship, we are very demanding and possessive of our partner, right? And if they don't act the way we want them to, that's it. It's an affirmation of all our fears. So what does avoidant look like in adulthood? What does it look like? We haven't really learned how to connect with people when we were children. How are we going to learn it now if we don't look at it? So these are the people who have difficulty creating long-lasting relationship, and they have it's very difficult for them to have trust with other people. They're intolerant, they're critical. You turn away from uncomfortable feelings by looking at yourself. These are the children who have had to parent themselves pretty young in life, right? You have to learn to take care of yourself. So these are the kind of people who are very high on avoidance and very low on anxiety. They are not really bothered. If you do for them, fine. If you don't for them, they are going to do it themselves. They're uncomfortable with closeness. That's it. They primarily value independence and freedom, and they do not worry about the partner's availability too much. So what is the mental chatter that is going on in their minds? I'm uncomfortable being close to others. I find it difficult to trust and depend. And I prefer that others don't depend on me. Let them manage themselves. So it's important that I feel self-sufficient and independent. And my partner is so demanding. They want me to be intimate and comfortable with them all the time. I'm okay. That's not my need. So what does the partnership look like? Emotionally distant? Because that's the only way they could have their needs met when they were children, right? They could not depend. So they had to parent themselves at a time when they had the least resources, right? So these are the people who deactivate their attachment needs and feelings and behaviors. They equate intimacy with loss of independence. All these jokes that used to go on before, oh, once you get married, that's it. You lose freedom. So I think it is somewhere there is in my mind that it's in a very avoidant or an anxious relationship where you equate intimacy with loss of independence. It isn't. It's not. You can prefer autonomy to togetherness. And these are the people who are not really able to allow a partner to lean on them constantly. For them, independence is a priority. Communication is mostly intellectual. They're not comfortable talking about emotions, and they avoid conflicts, and then suddenly they'll explode. Oh, forget it. Leave it. They can't work through this whole relationship and figure out how to be interdependent. Mostly they are cool. Their emotional range is not complete. They prefer to be alone all the time, so they are not able to experience themselves completely, right? So they're good in crisis, though. There's always a good side to everything, and they can take charge because they are not very emotional. So if we have grown up with an insecure attachment pattern, we project and duplicate the patterns as adults, even when these patterns actually hurts us and they are not in our own self-interest. That's the point, right? So these are the people who will not be very emotionally available as a parent either. They are detached, they are disengaged. The children will also, now you have perpetuated it to the children as well, right? So these are the people who have pseudo independence, because pseudo independence is actually an illusion. Every human being needs the connection. So if you show that you don't need it, what is going on? So these are the people who deny themselves the importance of loved one by showing that I don't care, right? They are they have to defend themselves psychologically all the time, and they have to shut down emotionally, and they are able to turn off their feelings when heated reactions is going on. For example, if their partners are really hurt and they're carrying, they will just say, "Oh, I don't care, I don't know how to deal with this, I don't care." So they are detached. They do not know how to engage and nurture intimacy in close relationships. The final one, disorganized. If you're disorganized, where will you be? Very high on avoidance and very high on anxiety. Uncomfortable with intimacy, of course, because you're not comfortable getting close to others because you can't trust them or depend on them. And I'm very worried that I'll get hurt if I get too close to my partner, right? So it's difficult for us to establish loving, positive relationship if we are disorganized. So what does it look like in close partnership? Unresolved mindset, frightened by memories of something that has happened before, losses that have not been mourned or resolved. So these are the people who attempt to keep their feelings at bay, but they can't. It's a mix of anxiety as well as avoidant. They're afraid of being too close or too distant. All the time this is going on. They are in a bind. So they cannot tolerate emotional closeness in a relationship. They're very argumentative. There's rage around them. They're unable to regulate their emotions. They are unpredictable. That you go towards people because you need them, but you don't want to share yourself. They want safety from the person that they want to be close to, but they don't know how to do it. So they do not have any organized strategy of getting their needs met. It's a very confusing and very sad place for them, actually. I have quite a few people in my personal sessions who come. So these are the people who may cling to their partners when they feel rejected, and they feel trapped when they're too close. Get the point? That they find themselves in a very rocky and dramatic relationships with many highs and many lows, and they have fears of being abandoned, but they really, really want to be intimate as well. So eventually they can become antisocials with lack of empathy because they're not showing anything. And these are the people who are likely to maltreat their own children as well. So these are the children, they are the people who will kind of make a script where they pass on their unresolved fears, attachments, and it's now the child will have to deal with it. So their own children will develop a disorganized style, learning because they have modeled that style to them. Right? So they have fears of being abandoned, and they struggle with being intimate, and they pass on that conflict to others as well. I think we have done enough to explain that attachment patterns are passed from one generation to another. But I have a quote that I really like, the way Mother Teresa looked at love and attachment. She says that love begins at home. And it is not how much we do, but how much love we put into that particular action, right? So what does recovery look like? We can start by remembering that attachment, um, it's good to know your own attachment style in different relationships in your present life, because uh, this is how you relate, or you might want to you automatically relate in adult romantic relationship, and this is how you will relate to your children as well, right? But what matters more than what is happening is not what happened to you as a child, but how you deal with it today. There are many people who go on from being a victim or lost or avoidant and disorganized to becoming overcome, you know. So what does it look like? What does the space look like? If it is possible to move from disorganized, anxious and avoidant relationship, what is the work that we need to do, right? We need to learn what is about us. What are the things that we need to live with, and what is not about us? So we need not live with them. It is someone else's, right? So we can act out of our deepest integral nature, take care of our own inner child. What are the questions that help when we do that? What am I doing now? How is it working for me? A deep exploration. Am I comfortable seeking help or not? Because how do we honor our feelings? Because there is no right or wrong feeling. Have we given ourselves the permission to feel our feelings and invite them in? And we can be aware of what we are allowing. And if we are aware, then we can challenge our own coping patterns by choosing a partner with a secure attachment style and working and developing ourselves in that particular relationship. So by becoming aware of your attachment style, both you and your partner can challenge your past insecurities and fears, which are supported by your age-old working models, and develop new styles, new attachment styles in a loving relationship, right? So now, what do we want to do? Do we want to be a victim, or do we want to be an overcomer? How long do we want to go on staying in the locked in a past relationship where we are emotionally addicted to being a victim? Because when that happens, we lose personal power. But there is an answer. We can be at the beginning of all our problems' ends. We can begin with mindfulness. We can begin with personal inner work. We can reach out to people. And what is a double bonanza? The disenchantment that will come with the ability to be with ourselves instead of reacting automatically with it, right? So we have the ability to understand and acknowledge our pain and allow ourselves to grieve and release that pain. At the end of today's session, that would be the end of today's session, where you have the choice now. What do you want to work with? If you think that you're insecurely attached to in any relationship, what do you want to work with? Do you want to work with calming your biology, mindfulness works, and looking at it, or you want to work on your behavior by understanding and reaching out to people who can share more clarity with you, or both? The combination works very well. Thanks a lot.